The massive display in the Galactic Council chamber showed a growing purple mass that twisted and turned like an angry storm cloud. Around the circular table, representatives from 30 different species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. None of them wanted to say what they were all thinking. They were scared. Council leader Bright Steel, with his metallic scales gleaming under the chamber lights, stood up. His species, the Metallics, were known across the galaxy as fearless warriors, but even his voice trembled slightly as he spoke. The quantum anomaly has now consumed 3 uninhabited systems, he said, pointing at the purple mass. Our best predictions show it will reach populated worlds within 30 standard days. The room erupted in worried whispers. A representative of the Crimson Warriors, tall beings with red skin and horns, slammed his fist on the table. "Then we must attack it now," he shouted. "Send our strongest ships. We will destroy this threat with pure force." Bright Steel shook his head. "We tried that last week. The Crimson Warriors sent their finest battle fleet. We lost contact with all 50 ships the moment they entered the anomaly's outer edge." This silenced the room. The Crimson Warriors were among the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. If they had failed, a small bug-like being raised one of its 4 arms. The Star Runners attempted to navigate through it yesterday. Our fastest ships, our bravest pilots. The antenna on its head drooped. None returned. One by one, representatives shared similar stories. The Rock Breaker's strongest mining ships had vanished. The Energy Weaver's most advanced probes had gone dark. Even the Ancient Ones, a species that had traveled the stars for millions of years, admitted their attempts to study the anomaly had failed. "There must be someone," Bright Steel said, his metallic fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Some species that can help us understand this threat before it reaches populated systems." A quiet voice spoke from the far end of the table. "What about the humans?" Everyone turned to look at Representative Dawn Singer of the Melody People. She was known for suggesting unusual solutions, but this seemed beyond unusual. "The humans," someone scoffed. "Those cowards. They refuse to even build proper warships," another added. "They wear protection suits to walk on perfectly safe planets. They spend years testing things before using them." Bright Steel raised his hand for silence, but he was smiling too. Everyone knew about humans. They were the galaxy's newest spacefaring species, and by far its most cautious. They insisted on safety protocols for everything. Their ships were built with triple redundancy systems. They quarantined themselves when visiting new planets. They even sent robots ahead of their colonies. But Dawn Singer stood her ground. "Exactly," she said. "The humans study everything carefully. They plan. They prepare. They're the only species I know that has an entire government department dedicated to learning from past mistakes." "You mean we should ask the cowards because they're cowards?" the Crimson Warrior representative growled. "I mean," Dawn Singer said patiently, "that humans might succeed precisely because they are careful. Everyone else tried to fight the anomaly or race through it. Maybe we need a species that will stop, observe, and try to understand it first." Bright Steel's expression changed as he considered this. He walked over to a smaller screen and pulled up data about Earth ships. Their thick hulls, their multiple backup systems, their extensive sensor arrays. "They do have experience with quantum research," he admitted, "and their ships are practically mobile fortresses." "They're so slow," someone complained. "Yes," Dawn Singer agreed, "but they're still alive. Everyone who went in fast isn't." The room fell silent again. The purple mass on the main screen seemed to pulse, as if mocking their failed attempts to stop it. Finally, Bright Steel straightened up. "Contact Earth," he ordered. "Tell them." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Tell them we need their expertise in careful observation and analysis of an unusual phenomenon. And tell them to bring their safety protocols. All of them." As the message was sent, the council members watched the quantum anomaly swirl and grow. None of them felt particularly confident about asking the galaxy's most cautious species for help, but they had tried courage. They had tried power. They had tried speed. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to try cowardice. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Prudence, watching his crew triple-check every system. Other species might have laughed at such careful preparation, but Walker had learned long ago that laughter was better than funeral silence. Main systems check complete, Captain. First Officer Maria Torres reported, her fingers moving across 3 different safety screens. All backup systems are green. Secondary backup systems are also green. And the emergency backups? Walker asked, knowing the answer but asking anyway. It was part of their protocol. Green across the board. Torres confirmed with a small smile. She understood why he asked every time. The Prudence was humanity's most advanced research vessel, though the alien races probably saw it as a floating fortress of fear. Its hull was 3 times thicker than standard. Every system had 2 backups. Every backup had an emergency backup. The aliens called it paranoid. Humans called it Tuesday. Through the main viewport, Walker could see the massive metallic warship that had escorted them to the rendezvous point. Its sleek, aggressive design made the Prudence look like a cautious turtle in comparison. But Walker knew which ship he'd rather be in when things went wrong. Captain, Chief Engineer Robert Smith called from his station. The council representatives are requesting permission to board. They want to inspect our preparations. The pause in his voice said everything about how previous inspections had gone. Walker nodded. Grant them access through Airlock 3. Full decontamination protocols. Minutes later, Bright Steel and 2 other council members stepped onto the bridge. They had complained about the decontamination process, but Walker didn't care. Rules were rules. This, Bright Steel said, looking around, is your best ship. Walker stood straight. This is our most suitable ship for the mission. It looks like a floating bunker, one of the other representatives said. Where are your weapon systems? We have defensive capabilities, Walker replied calmly. But our focus is on research, observation, and survival. The 3rd representative, who Walker recognized as Dawn Singer from the mission briefing, moved closer to Torres's station. You monitor all these systems constantly. Yes, Torres said. And we run full diagnostics every 4 hours, more often if we detect any anomalies. How do you get anything done? Bright Steel asked, genuine confusion in his metallic features. Walker gestured to the main screen, where data about the quantum anomaly scrolled past. We've been studying the phenomenon since we received your message. From a safe distance, using remote drones and long-range sensors. From a safe distance, Bright Steel repeated, almost spitting the words, while worlds are at risk. Yes, Walker said firmly, because we can't help anyone if we're dead. Our drones have already gathered more data than any of the ships that flew in directly. This caught their attention. Dawn Singer moved to examine the data. You've been able to take readings. From multiple angles, Smith added from his station. We've mapped its energy patterns, studied its expansion rate, and identified several unusual quantum signatures, all without losing a single crew member. The council members exchanged looks. Walker could read their expressions even across species barriers. Reluctant realization. And what has all this careful observation told you? Bright Steel asked, trying to keep the interest out of his voice. Walker touched a control, bringing up a new display. The anomaly isn't random. It's structured. There's a pattern to its quantum fluctuations. We think it might be artificial. Artificial. Dawn Singer's antenna perked up. You mean? Someone made it, Walker confirmed. And they made it in a way that rewards careful study and punishes rash action. If we're right, charging in with weapons or trying to race through it was exactly what it was designed to stop. Bright Steel stared at the display for a long moment. And you believe your cautious approach will work better? Walker looked at his crew. At Torres running another system check, at Smith monitoring the drone feeds, at every human doing their job with careful, methodical precision. "We believe," he said, "that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take your time to do things right." The Prudence's engines hummed quietly as they prepared for their next careful step forward. They might be called cowards, but they would be alive cowards. And right now, that made them the galaxy's best hope. The Prudence's observation room was dark except for the soft glow of holographic displays showing the quantum anomaly. Captain Walker stood with Bright Steel and Dawn Singer, watching as new data streamed in from their latest drone scan. "There," Torres said, pointing to a pattern in the numbers. "It's exactly like the Cambridge event." Bright Steel's metallic features shifted in confusion. "The what?" "The Cambridge event," Walker explained. "A quantum physics experiment that went wrong on Earth about 50 years ago. It created a similar, though much smaller, anomaly. And you survived this event?" Dawn Singer asked, her antenna twitching with interest. "No," Walker said quietly. 17 scientists died. But we learned from it, documented everything, created new safety protocols. And now, 50 years later, that knowledge might save entire worlds." Bright Steel made a sound that might have been a scoff. "You humans and your obsession with documenting failures. Warriors celebrate victories, not defeats." Walker touched a control, bringing up images from Earth's history. "Every one of these is a disaster we learned from. Every one represents lives lost so others could live. We remember them not because we're afraid, but because we respect the lessons they taught us." On the main screen, the quantum anomaly pulsed with purple energy. A drone approached it carefully, following the safe path they had mapped out. "Your people," Dawn Singer said thoughtfully, "treat fear differently than any species I've encountered. You don't ignore it. You don't fight it. You listen to it." Torres nodded from her station. "Fear is a tool. It's like pain. It tells you something's wrong. Ignoring it doesn't make you brave. It makes you careless." The drone's readings suddenly spiked. Smith's fingers flew across his control panel, adjusting its shield frequencies. Under normal circumstances, they would have pulled the drone back immediately. But they had planned for this, prepared for it. "Look at how you handle that drone," Bright Steel observed. "Any warrior race would have pushed forward, tried to break through. And they'd have lost another drone," Smith replied, still focused on his adjustments. "Sometimes bravery means knowing when to hold back." The drone stabilized, its readings returning to normal. More valuable data flowed into their computers. Walker could see Bright Steel struggling with something, his metallic fingers tapping against his arm. Finally, the alien warrior spoke. "In all our attempts to confront this anomaly, we never considered that our courage might be our weakness." "It's not weakness to be brave," Walker said. "But there's no strength in being reckless. Every human child learns about the boy who cried wolf, the frog and the scorpion, the tortoise and the hare. Stories about how rushing in without thinking leads to failure. You teach your children to be cautious." Dawn Singer seemed fascinated. "We teach them to think," Torres corrected. "To understand that fear isn't their enemy. It's their ally." On the screen, their careful drone mapping had revealed something new. A pattern within the chaos, a structure behind the swirling purple energy, something that all the brave warriors charging in had missed. "There," Smith said, highlighting the pattern. "The anomaly's quantum signature. It's not random at all. It's like it's waiting for something." Walker studied the pattern, feeling that familiar mix of fear and curiosity that had driven human exploration since the first person looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. "Your people," Dawn Singer said softly, "you're not really cowards at all, are you? You've just learned to use your fear instead of letting it use you." "Fear keeps us alive," Walker replied, watching as another piece of the puzzle fell into place on their screens. "But curiosity makes us keep going. The trick is finding the balance." The quantum anomaly pulsed again, as if responding to their understanding. They were getting closer to its secrets, not through bravery or force, but through careful, methodical respect for its dangers. Sometimes, Walker thought, the greatest courage was in admitting you were afraid and moving forward anyway. The Prudence's main lab was filled with holograms showing 5 weeks' worth of data. 5 weeks of careful observation, of sending drones, of gathering readings. 5 weeks that had felt like years to the watching galaxy, but that Captain Walker knew had been necessary. "The shield modifications are ready," Smith announced, looking up from his workstation. "Triple-checked and tested in simulation." "Only triple?" Torres asked with a small smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Quadruple, actually," Smith admitted. "Did the 4th check while everyone was sleeping." Walker nodded, examining the new shield design. It was unlike anything ever created before, based on their understanding of the quantum anomalies patterns. Where other ships had tried to force their way through, the Prudence would try to match the anomalies' quantum frequency. "Status report from the Council," Torres said, reading from her screen. 3 more systems are showing signs of quantum disruption. They're getting impatient. Bright Steel, who had remained aboard as the Council's observer, stepped forward. "My people are warriors," he said, "but even we must admit that your careful approach has revealed more than our bravery did. Still, time grows short." "We're ready," Walker said, surprising everyone in the room. "We've learned all we can from a distance. It's time to make our approach." The bridge crew took their positions, each running through their safety checks with practiced precision. The Prudence's engines hummed to life, pushing the ship slowly toward the massive purple storm that had swallowed so many others. "First barrier in range," Torres reported. "Shields holding. Quantum harmonics are stable." Walker watched the readings carefully. Other ships had rushed in, trying to punch through the quantum barriers. The Prudence moved slowly, its specially modified shields pulsing in rhythm with the anomaly's own energy patterns. "Second barrier approaching," Smith called out, adjusting shield frequency to match new quantum signature. Bright Steel stood silently at the back of the bridge, watching. Walker knew what the alien warrior was thinking, that any of his people's ships would have charged in at full speed by now. But the Prudence crept forward like a cautious diver approaching a curious sea creature. "Energy spike," Torres suddenly announced. "Unknown pattern. No, wait. It matches the theoretical model we developed. Adjusting shields to compensate." The ship shuddered slightly, but held steady. Their careful preparations were paying off. Each barrier they encountered matched one of their predictions, each challenge met by a precaution they had planned for. "We're deeper than any other ship has managed," Smith said, his voice tight with concentration. "Detecting something ahead. Not just energy patterns. There's something solid at the center of all this." The main screen showed it, a structure floating in the heart of the quantum storm. Geometric patterns covered its surface, pulsing with the same purple energy that filled the space around them. "It's artificial," Walker confirmed, "just as we suspected. This whole anomaly. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's more like a test." Bright Steel finished, understanding dawning in his metallic features. "All this time, it was testing us." Before anyone could respond, a new energy pattern washed over the ship. But unlike the destructive waves that had destroyed other vessels, this one felt almost gentle, welcoming. A voice filled the bridge, not through speakers but seemingly directly in their minds. "At last," it said, "someone who understands, someone who respects the unknown enough to study it, to learn, to prepare." The crew looked at each other, startled but not panicking. They had prepared for first contact scenarios too, even if they hadn't expected one quite like this. "For too long," the voice continued, "we have watched species charge blindly into the unknown. But you showed wisdom, patience, true courage." Walker stepped forward, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We're humans," he said. "We believe in being prepared." "Yes," the voice replied, and somehow they could hear the smile in it. That is exactly why you are worthy to hear what we have to say. The quantum storm around them shifted, creating a clear path to the structure at its heart. An invitation, but one that Walker knew they would accept only after proper preparation and planning. After all, they hadn't come this far by being reckless. The structure at the heart of the quantum anomaly was like nothing the crew of the Prudence had ever seen. Its walls seemed to shift between solid and energy, covered in symbols that moved and changed as they watched. Scanning complete, Torres reported from her station. The structure appears to be over 10 million years old. Walker stood at the center of the bridge, looking at the detailed scans they had taken before docking. Even now, with the mysterious voice's invitation, they refused to rush in blindly. "Your caution continues," the voice observed, somehow sounding both amused and approving. "Even after proving yourselves worthy, you maintain your careful approach." "It's who we are," Walker replied simply. "It's how we survive." The voice seemed to consider this. "Then you are indeed the ones we have waited for. Come, but bring your safety protocols. You will need them for what is to come." Following their first contact procedures, Walker assembled a small team. Each member wore their most advanced protective suits, each suit checked and double-checked. Bright Steel watched the preparations with newfound respect. "I will accompany you," the alien warrior said. It wasn't a request. Walker nodded. They had already prepared a suit modified for metallic physiology. "Standard safety protocols apply to everyone," he said. Bright Steel didn't argue. The team entered the structure through an airlock of their own design, matched to the quantum frequencies they had studied. Inside, the walls pulsed with that same purple energy, but now they could see patterns in it, like a heartbeat or a language. "We are the Guardians," the voice explained as they walked. "We were tasked with finding those worthy of continuing our work." "Your work?" Smith asked, his sensors constantly scanning their surroundings. The walls around them changed, showing images of distant galaxies, of worlds dying and being reborn, of civilizations rising and falling. "We maintain the balance," the voice said. "We watch. We guide. We protect. But we are fading. We need successors." Suddenly, alarms blared on the Prudence. Torres's voice came through their comms. "Captain, the quantum anomaly is expanding exponentially. 3 more systems just showed critical readings." The Guardian's voice grew urgent. "This is the final test. The breaking point. What you do now will determine everything." Walker looked at his team, then at the readings from the ship. The anomaly was growing faster than ever, threatening dozens of inhabited worlds. The Galactic Council would be demanding immediate action. "You have a way to stop it," Walker said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," the voice confirmed, "but it requires something from you. A choice." The walls shifted again, revealing a massive chamber filled with technology beyond their understanding. At its center stood a crystal that pulsed with intense purple light. "The power to control the quantum fields," the voice explained, "to prevent disaster. But to claim it, you must act now. Immediately. Without your usual preparations." Bright Steel stepped forward. "Then we must act. Worlds are at risk." But Walker held up his hand. "No," he said firmly. "That's exactly what we must not do." "But the systems," Bright Steel began, "are exactly why we need to be careful," Walker interrupted. "The bigger the crisis, the more important it is to do things right." He turned to address the voice directly. "This is part of the test, isn't it? To see if we'll abandon our principles under pressure." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of energy around them. Then, slowly, the purple light began to dim. "Understanding," the voice said warmly. "True understanding at last." "Yes, Captain Walker. The final test was not to see if you would act. It was to see if you would maintain your wisdom even in the face of catastrophe." The alarms from the Prudence fell silent. The readings returned to normal. There was no real danger to those systems, Walker guessed. "No," the voice confirmed. But you could not have known that. And still, you chose to be thorough, to be careful, to be human. Bright Steel's metallic features showed shock, then dawning comprehension. All this time, he said slowly, we thought humanity's caution was their weakness, but it was their greatest strength. The crystal at the center of the chamber began to glow with a new light, warm and welcoming. Now, the voice said, shall we begin your real preparation? Carefully, of course. Walker smiled. We wouldn't have it any other way. The crystal chamber had become their new center of operations. For 3 days, the crew of the Prudence worked alongside the Guardians, learning about the vast network of quantum technologies that helped maintain balance in the galaxy. The knowledge transfer is reaching critical stages. Torres reported, studying the streams of data flowing through their modified systems. The Guardians' power is fading faster than we anticipated. Walker stood before the main crystal, its purple light now flickering like a dying heartbeat. The Guardians had revealed that their time was truly ending. Their energy, their very essence, was depleting. Someone needed to take their place, to accept their power and responsibility. The Council is growing concerned, Bright Steel said, reading reports from his people. They fear what humans might do with such power. They fear, the Guardian's voice echoed softly, because they do not understand. Just as they feared your caution, they now fear your potential. Smith looked up from his workstation, where he had been analyzing the crystal's energy patterns. Captain, I think I understand what we need to do, but he hesitated. You're not going to like it. Walker moved to Smith's station, studying the complex diagrams and calculations. His face grew serious as he understood what his engineer was suggesting. We need to link our minds directly to the crystal, Smith explained to the others, not just interface with it through technology. The transfer requires complete connection. Torres shook her head. The risk of neural damage would be significant, Walker finished, but calculable. The room fell silent. The Guardians had taught them much about their quantum technologies, about the responsibilities they held. But this final step, this ultimate transfer of power, would require something that even careful, cautious humans might hesitate to attempt. The warrior races would jump at this chance, Bright Steel observed. They would see it as a glorious risk. Which is exactly why they weren't chosen, Walker said quietly. He turned to his crew. Smith, how long would it take to properly calculate the risks? To prepare safety protocols. 6 hours for basic preparations, Smith replied. 12 for comprehensive safety measures. The crystal's light flickered again, weaker than before. You have 4 hours, the Guardian's voice said softly. Our energy fades faster than expected. After that, the transfer may not be possible at all. Walker looked at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt. Then we have a choice to make, he said. We can walk away, maintain absolute safety, or we can take a calculated risk. Torres stepped forward. There's a difference between being careful and being paralyzed by fear, she said. We've studied this technology. We've prepared as much as we can. And sometimes, Smith added, the bravest thing you can do is take a necessary risk after proper preparation. Walker nodded slowly. Begin preparations, he ordered. Full neural protection protocols, modified for accelerated implementation. We do this right, even if we do it quickly. The next 4 hours were a blur of activity. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, adapting their safety procedures, running simulations, preparing for every possibility they could think of. It wasn't their usual thorough preparation, but it was far more than any warrior race would have attempted. As the crystal's light grew dangerously dim, Walker stood before it with his senior crew. Their protective suits had been modified, their minds prepared as much as possible. Even now, the Guardians observed, you take precautions, you prepare. Others would have rushed in immediately. We're human, Walker said simply. We take risks when we must, but we take them smartly. The crystal pulsed once, strongly, as if in final approval. Walker looked at his crew, saw their determined faces behind their protective visors. "Begin the transfer," he ordered, carefully. As they stepped forward to accept their destiny, Walker realized that this was what true courage looked like, not the absence of fear, but the wisdom to respect it while moving forward anyway. The crystal's light began to change, reaching out to them like purple lightning. It was time to show the galaxy what human cowardice could really achieve. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as Captain Walker stood at the podium. His crew sat behind him, their eyes now carrying a faint purple glow, a permanent mark of their connection to the Guardian's power. It had been 1 month since the transfer, 1 month since humanity had taken on a responsibility that would change the galaxy forever. "The quantum network is stable," Walker reported, his voice carrying easily through the vast room. "All affected systems have been restored. The Prudence's crew has successfully integrated with the Guardian's technologies, and we have begun the process of establishing training protocols for future human operators." Bright Steel, now standing among the council leaders, nodded in approval, but not everyone was as accepting. "You expect us to trust the galaxy's safety to cowards?" a representative of the Crimson Warriors demanded. "To beings who triple-check everything and wrap themselves in protective bubbles." Walker smiled slightly. "Would you prefer to trust it to those who rush in without thinking, who mistook recklessness for bravery?" The chamber erupted in whispers. Torrid stepped forward, her purple-tinged eyes scanning the room. "We were chosen precisely because we are careful," she said. "The Guardians didn't want warriors. They wanted protectors. There's a difference." Smith activated a holographic display, showing the vast network of quantum pathways that the Guardians had maintained, and that humans now watched over. "Each of these paths could destroy entire systems if mishandled," he explained. "One wrong move, one hasty decision, could mean billions of deaths. Is that really something you want in the hands of someone who acts without thinking?" The whispers died down as the council members considered this. Dawn Singer, who had first suggested involving humans, stood up. "I have watched these humans," she announced. "I saw how they handled the transfer of power. Even with only 4 hours to prepare, they spent every minute developing safety protocols. And because of that preparation, they succeeded where braver races would have failed." Walker nodded to her in thanks, then turned back to address the full council. "The Guardians chose us because we understand something that many species have forgotten," he said. "True courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about respecting the things that should be feared, preparing for them, and then moving forward anyway." He gestured to his crew. "We succeeded because we were careful, not in spite of it. We survived because we took the time to understand what we were facing. And now we'll protect this galaxy the same way, with careful consideration, proper preparation, and respect for the power we hold." The chamber was quiet again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence. Bright Steel stepped down from his position and walked to stand beside Walker. "I once thought as many of you do," the metallic warrior admitted. "I saw human caution as weakness. Their safety protocols seemed like chains holding them back. But I have learned." He turned to face the council. "Their caution is their strength. Their preparation is their power, and their respect for danger. That is their truest courage." The Crimson Warrior representative stood again, but this time his tone was different. How do we learn this kind of courage?" Walker smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "The same way we learned it. One careful step at a time, one safety protocol at a time, one lesson at a time." He touched his chest, where the crystal's power now resided within him and his crew. "The Guardians chose us to protect and guide. So that's what we'll do. We'll teach other species that there's no shame in being careful. That preparation isn't cowardice. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take your time to do things right." The council chamber filled with a new kind of respect. Not the loud admiration given to warriors, but the deeper appreciation for those who would protect them all. As Walker looked out at the assembled representatives of the galaxy, he saw understanding dawning in their eyes. Humanity's greatest perceived weakness had proven to be its greatest strength. Their cowardice had saved them all. And in the end, that was the bravest thing of all.